This is the Full Ton Podcast.
Okay, so we'll stop talking about Solo for now, and we're going to move on to the future of the franchise for now. We're probably going to end up splitting this into a two-parter, but anyway.
Everything turns into a two-parter.
Yeah, pretty much, but that's good.
Yeah,
not too bad.
It's going to be difficult to split that up because it's like we said, spoiler for Han Solo, so hopefully most everyone's already seen it.
Yeah.
Because that was a lot more than 5 minutes.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out
half of it is spoiler
Just go ahead and
alert.
skip straight to part 2.
Yeah.
Where, but yeah, I'm not gonna apologize for my opinions. Sorry, I punched you in the face.
Anyway, so talking about the future of the franchise,
We'll pan back.
I feel like, coming from a guy who I write, I make movies. This is what I do. I do podcasts. I make media, and I make it for my audience. When I take an audience into account, I think, okay, these are the people who've already seen some of my stuff, and I need to make sure that they feel included. But I can't limit myself to that either. And I need to be able to expand, because otherwise you just end up repeating yourself and saying the same thing over and over again, and it gets blander. And that's the way that this, or at least when it comes from the people who are creating at Lucasfilm and Disney have put it, and basically that everybody who doesn't like the new movies is toxic and evil. And to be entirely honest, I have heard a lot of really nasty opinions, but I feel like they're being magnified on purpose. I don't like, in other words, they're saying these people are being mean. Kelly Marie Tran got off Instagram, and I'm like, welcome to the internet.
Well,
people hate people on the internet.
Okay, so
It wasn't good. It was nasty. But
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I know people like I listen to political commentators, and they're still on the internet, and almost every single one of them faces, like, I know guys who are comedians, and they face death threats on like they have the FBI on speed dial, and I'm sitting here, and they still go out there and they do their stuff, and that's not everybody.
No.
Not everybody's cut out for that. But I don't think that that's a valid reason to say the fan base is toxic.
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. That's not a reason to say the entire fan base is toxic. Is painting it with a broad stroke. There's over 1 billion Star Wars fans, or 1 billion people who've seen Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I didn't tweet at her or post on her Instagram. I mean, I barely use Instagram as it is, so I'm not going to go on there and trash her. But that being said, everyone who did trash her and did hate her, if you don't like the character she played, that's fine.
When Bodega said the same
thing. She's
thing.
playing a character. She's doing her job.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I also don't think it's fair to compare her to commentators. Her job is to commentate on society. Her job is to play a character in a fictional movie where it's a story. So it's not fair to say, 100% fair to say that, while political commentators can take it, because that's their job. Her job is not to deal with jerks who say she is a worthless piece of human garbage that ruined their Star Wars movie. Those people are 100% in the wrong. That's not her job. But yes, on the internet, you do need to be willing to take your lumps.
Yeah, not necessarily covering like people stalking you and representing a legitimate threat. But I do think, like for instance, like I made an Army Men movie, just basically with plastic Army Men soldiers, and I put it on the internet. And it really wasn't meant to be super polished. It has like almost 7 million views now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of comments. And
how many comments on there are of "I see your hand" at number?
Oh, jeez. If
It's
I
like
had,
a-
if
it's
I
like
had $1
50,000
for
of those.
every
It's
comment
crazy.
that is "I see your hand," I would be
I see the popsicle
I
stick
would
that's
be a
pushing the fingers all
millionaire.
along.
I swear.
Yeah.
I would be. It
Well,
would
half of
be
those comments
amazing.
came from me, to be fair.
That's dang it.
My alt accounts.
And I'm not comparing death threats to those, but
right.
every now and then there was some dude who is like, "You're gay," but it's just so incompetently put together.
Yeah, well, I don't.
And anything that was over like 3 paragraphs that didn't have anything good to say in the first few sentences,
read.
I just didn't read.
Yeah.
And that's just a thing that you have to learn about life is don't pay attention if all they have to say is bad things, because they obviously don't care about you enough to say something that would actually help you improve. That's not useful to you. And That's true. I've heard people go, oh, such and such director, he should just burn in hell. I don't like him.
Yeah, no,
and I'm like,
nobody should have to do
90% of those people are joking, and the 10% who actually direct tweet that to somebody they hate, they're wrong. That's just being a jerk, and but that happens.
Just to say something real quick, what Craig said is basically exactly what Boyega said. Oh, was that his last name?
John Boyega?
Boyega, yeah. John Boyega said essentially exactly what you said, and I thought that was more than fair.
Well, and my impression of most of the actors that are in this is that they're perfectly fine people.
Yeah,
John Boyega has some acting chops. I mean, I saw him, in the trailer for Pacific Rim.
Yeah, exactly.
And I heard that was still a terrible movie, but I saw him in it and his attitude as a character, and I went, if he'd been doing that as Finn, I'd watch it and it'd be fine.
I don't think any of these actors are doing a bad job.
Yeah,
I think they're dealing with a bad script.
Oh,
and
yes.
and
you can tell too.
Right, and I think a lot of it is it's kind of similar to what happened in the prequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Ewan McGregor, fantastic actor. I think he was the best thing to come out of that trilogy.
Oh yeah,
but he still had a bad script.
Yeah,
and I think just the fact that he was able to pull something out of that was impressive. And that being said, again, the character of Rose, poorly written. It felt like. And just
poorly styled.
But she seems like it. She's right. She seems. But that being said,
I'm the revolutionary potato.
What's her name? What's the actress's name for Rose?
Marie
Transam.
Yeah.
Transam. No.
Anyways,
she seems like a very nice person.
No, yeah,
I don't think she deserved what she got out of the internet.
Yeah, she did.
And everyone who I don't know what people said. I didn't go in there and look. I didn't look it up to see what people were saying directly about her.
Well, I think that's the thing. That's mostly my point. Is that 90% of the people who didn't like these movies didn't have anything to do with that. But because Hollywood is not liking the way that response went, and Lucasfilm isn't liking that, they're trying to cast all of the people who didn't like it, which included somebody like you, who's still trying to give the films a chance. You're not even part of the boycott.
I'm still gonna go see the next Star Wars because I have hope.
Right. Hope.
Episode 4.
If somebody says hope again in a Star Wars
Rogue
movie,
One might be the best Star Wars movie of the new Star Wars movies.
Oh, that's hands down. Hands down, it was the best one.
Also, but I think, just side note, I think that did the best because there were no main characters that we had to upkeep, and other than Mon Mothma. And did we see Akbar?
Yeah. No, we saw Raditz instead.
Yeah, there was Raditz.
But it was the stand-in Akbar.
Pretty much.
Essentially.
Yeah.
We saw a Mon Calamari species representation in that movie.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But that being said, like I said,
#diversity.
So I just don't think that. I just think that movie did the best because there wasn't anything to live up. I had problems with that movie. I have problems with every Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they're insignificant compared to the problems I have with current and newer Star Wars movies.
Well, and you'll notice, in the end of Solo, like I said, the problem was not so much with the threads that they completed because they finished a lot of them. They got us to episode 4 on a lot of them. Mm-hmm. It was the new ones they manufactured in the course of the movie, and that's something they didn't do in Rogue One. They didn't make any new threads.
Oh yeah, they killed it.
They just killed it all. They ended it.
In that movie.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spoiler alert again.
Oh boy!
If you haven't seen that movie and it's been out for 2 years now?
Oh boy!
Yeah.
If you haven't seen that movie by now? Shame on you.
Shame. Yes,
it's a good
movie.
Go
watch it on Netflix.
Yeah. I actually kind of wish they hadn't all died. Maybe if only half of them had died or something. Mm-hmm. Because, but at the same time, it was fine that they did. I guess it's just
as far as the story is concerned. Yeah.
Rogue One was pretty good though, and I felt like it was interesting because it's like the first one is D-Day. They all come piling out of the door, right? And they're like, bah, 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 and the villagers are shooting at them. And then you have in the bombers, and the bombers are, look, it's B-17s, guys. Mm-hmm. It's like World War II, guys. And I remember both of those felt very I was sitting there going, I know what you're referring to, and you're not doing it very well. But with Rogue One, and I still don't know if this was intentional, but it's very much not a espionage thriller from the post 9/11 era where everything is about technology. Yeah. It's like a World War II or Cold War thriller where it's like a commando story, like the Guns of Navarone, where everybody dies at the end.
Yeah.
Well, everybody dies in that. I forgot about that.
Right. Well, no, not everybody dies at the end of the Guns of Navarone, but several people. You'll notice. I mean, they were not. People. They were okay with doing that, and it made it feel real and stuff. You know, that was where I. Did you see the Guns of Navarone?
Was that one with Alec Guinness?
No,
wait, which one am I thinking of? That's the bridge of some of the movies.
That's the bridge over the on the River Kwai.
That one, also
and that's about POWs.
Everyone also did.
Yes, there were a lot of World War II. But there were a lot of World War II movies where they had covert actions and stuff, and they would go and they would try to sabotage a bridge or sabotage a thing or steal the plans, and then everyone would die at the end.
And then they would have all these. What I thought was really interesting that they had in Rogue One that put that patina of that movie on it was this constant connection back to this command and control center through coded messages, and this disconnect between command and on the ground stuff. And London says this, and we got to do that. And I thought that was a very a well done tension in Rogue One. That was very good. I think.
Well, they're very much kind of, it's like they're survival movies, but they're also about doing something heroic and selfless, and that's what part of what makes them so tense, is you see these characters trying to balance things like, I have this wounded guy, and do we leave him to be captured by the Nazis because that's the only chance he'll have of ever walking again, or do we bring him along with us in the hope that something happens. I don't know. Those are hard decisions, man. That kind of it adds depth without adding, a huge amount of graphicness to it, I guess. See, you can put that in a Star Wars movie, and it still adds that tension. They didn't do a whole lot of that in Rogue One, but it seemed like they was very much inspired by those type of movies, and I thought that was very interesting.
It was a homage that was played very straight, and this is one of the problems, I think, that you're seeing with Star Wars today. And what's happening is, it's almost like, those stories back in the day were written based on actual stories from history most of the time. So the commando raids are where you get these commando movies from, right? So you'd have various raids on they used to have commando raids where you'd send in 200 guys to try and take out a U-boat pen where they would keep all the U-boats, and they'd sabotage the place for the remainder of the war, and then that was what the British would do, right? And it was kind of for the Brits, it was you stab the giant in the eye when he can't touch you, but it made for a very interesting thing, but it's real story is what I'm telling you. They're getting it from somewhere real. And now I feel like a lot of Star Wars stuff is pulling from stories that are pulling from stories, and you've got this like 2 steps away from reality, and it means that they start to care more about the feeling that gives you, and not a mechanic that makes sense anymore.
Well, that's a good point.
It's like being too far away from reality, and I feel like it hurts them.
Yeah, it's like even Star Wars itself, when they made the original movies, they were pulling on familiar things. And so if you're going to pull on Star Wars to make Star Wars, you're one step removed almost. It doesn't mean you shouldn't. Exactly. It just means that those stories themselves, and even the expanded universe stories, like where they had these guys, or a lot of these sci-fi writers who wrote the expanded universe stuff, like Timothy Zahn, they were good sci-fi writers in their own right. They were already drawing and creating stories out of this thing from history, or this thing from culture, or this kind of character guy, or whatever, this kind of archetype of the conqueror that repeats through history, or something like that.
Right. No story exists in a vacuum. It just doesn't.
And that's kind of. But I feel like when you had like The Force Awakens, and a lot of people were saying that that was the nostalgia play, and then you had The Last Jedi, and that was we're going to do something new. When I saw the Force Awakens, I was kind of like, I don't think they know what they're making this story about. It felt like everything was like a picture of some scene from one of the older movies, except for it has a remix. Luke's a girl. She wears the same clothes as Luke, but she's a girl.
Yeah. She's
a white girl. He's a white guy. They both have funny hairdos, and they have sticks. Luke has a musket thing that he carries around, and Rey has a stick that she hits people with, and it doesn't break, even though Luke's broke when the sand guy hit it. Get it? It was almost like everything felt like that. The R2-D2 is a soccer ball now, and
but you don't feel the same way about the prequels. So the prequels,
I feel
Anakin started the same way. Started on Tatooine, had to get off Tatooine due to some crisis that happened in their life.
Yeah.
I think
there was some
there
of
was
it.
a lot of there, I think
Yeah.
what the prequels, or not the prequels, the sequels, is what we're calling the new trilogy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to the prequels, is they're maybe not doing as good of a job of. There were plenty of things where there was things pulled or actions redone that kind of drew parallels between episode 4, 5, and 6, and 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
But they weren't so tongue in cheek or like,
Yeah.
yeah, like
they
you're saying,
weren't.
get it? I'm gonna
Yeah,
elbow
yeah.
you. I'm elbowing John right now.
Yeah.
You get it? Do you get the reference? That
Well, see, they didn't
I
feel
think
like
it's
that in the
yeah.
even in the prequel trilogy, and even then, I didn't feel like they were very deep in the prequel trilogy. You know,
There's
because they
some.
were
There was
still they were referring back to
John
the
Lennon
original
talk.
movies instead of. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say that, I'll have to go find this video. Maybe you can include it in the show notes.
Okay.
But there's this video I saw that kind of showed all the parallels between 4, 5, and 6, and 1, 2, and 3, and it was
yeah.
actually kind of deeper than you'd think it was. Like I watch it, and I go, oh,
You know
that's
what?
a reference to that.
I think.
And I'll see if
Yeah,
I
I
can find it
hadn't,
again, and we'll include in the show notes. And I can't find it, we'll just delete the segment.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Or you're gonna listen to me talk like
What
talk
is
like a
that?
fool,
It's
and I'll
funny.
never link it.
I did see some behind the scenes stuff. I
Tweet me
might
your
have seen
complaints.
some of that, but I think I did see some behind the scenes stuff where Lucas is talking about how everybody knows that
Yeah.
thing where he's like it rhymes, it's like poetry, it
Right,
repeats.
I think that's pretty
And,
much what I was talking about. But
yeah,
it was
and,
it was more poetic because I think what happened was it was the original writer
Yeah, well,
who was
the-
kind of doing that and kind of drawing this plot. Whereas we have a new set of writers who don't talk to each other. J.J. Abrams,
Yeah,
Abrams
and Ryan.
Oh
yeah,
talk.
this is like
There was
it was
no,
like JJ had a
"This is where I'm
script.
going."
Well, they did talk to each other, and then they just discarded each
through
other's
dailies.
notes. It was like
Right.
Yeah.
JJ or I don't know, the way I haven't seen too much. I just I'm hearing a lot of this secondhand, so don't quote me. But JJ apparently wrote a script for episode 8, which would have been The Last Jedi, and it was following up from The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And he gave it to Ryan Johnson, but he
Right.
didn't really care too much about it.
'Cause he was
And
moving on to the
neither
next
did
Star Trek
Ryan
movie.
Johnson, because he
Yeah.
just dumped it and
Yeah.
rewrote the entire thing from scratch. And I remember something Mark Hamill was saying. I actually saw the clip, so I know he said this. And he said, "No, we're not going to give the fans what they want. We're going to do what we want."
Yep.
And
And tell the stories we want to tell.
yeah. And
Correction alert. John has failed to mention that Mark Hamill is quoting Ryan Johnson. Mark did not approve of Ryan's interpretation of Luke and said so. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming.
And I can see how I don't think Mark Hamill meant that in a detrimental way. And honestly,
'Cause there's some truth
when you
to
have
that,
some,
right? I mean-
well, there is some truth to that because you can't just if you're not going to tell your own story, you might as well just make remakes of the old movies
Exactly.
and just like do special editions. See, and that's you're not going to do that. But at the same time, what that meant to them versus what that meant to somebody who was a fan maybe
Yeah.
ended up being so different. And it's just and you came to The Force Awakens. It's like when I watched The Force Awakens, I felt like it was made by somebody who didn't really care what I thought, but was kind of trying to make something that they thought I would like.
And is now mad at me for not liking it.
Yeah,
well,
pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
That's-
I was kind of like,
yeah.
oh, okay, whatever. It's not very good, but it didn't ruin it wasn't too bad. And then
Right.
when we got to the Rogue One, I was like, well, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then we went to the Last Jedi, and it was like I handed them $8. I went in with really low expectations, and then it felt like the director was sitting in behind me the entire time going, slap, every 5 minutes, slap on the back of the head, slap, and then they would wait. And then it slapped out of nowhere. It was just like, gotcha, bitch. And I just sat, and I just was like, I'm not into this. I don't know what I think. I don't like it.
But
I don't feel like I'm having fun anymore. I feel like I'm being
Yeah.
preached at, or
I was talking about this earlier with John, and we were talking about how so there's when you do a gotcha thing, it's like when you do a magic trick, right? You bamboozle the audience, right? There's
twist ending.
The whole point of that is to get them to ask you a question, or ask the question, "Can I trust you?" And that's what they're going to ask every
can't
time you do that,
trust
right? So when the clown takes your $5 bill and then it disappears, You're immediately like, am I going to get that back? 'Cause that was my $5 bill.
Yeah.
And now, you see, the only way to make that fun is if the clown does in fact eventually give you the $5 bill back.
You can keep it. Clowns are scary.
Oh, they are pretty scary.
Assuming this is a clown you're not scared of.
I'm scared of all clowns.
He's an invisible clown.
Okay, assuming it's a magician doing a magic
A magician.
trick.
He's a magician doing a
It's
magic
your
trick.
uncle, and he's sitting there,
Right,
and
he's
he's
your
like,
uncle.
"Hey, you want to see a trick, kid?" And then he sticks a straw through his nose, or
Right,
whatever.
right.
Well, that's good because I wasn't following this until
Yeah,
you
I know.
changed it
I
from
said
which
clown,
one.
and then everybody's...
Yeah, it's a
everybody's
magician.
got-
Sorry, everybody thinks
kidding.
clowns is shorthand for everyone's phobia in the entire world.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
So
Anyway.
we'll have to use magician or your
Thanks, Stephen King.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the
listening.
question the audience will ask, and the question I always ask when they do that, when they twist it on you, you're always, the plot twist is to make you wonder. You're like, oh man, can I trust the writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if he then slaps you down and says, well, you were an idiot for thinking that it should be this way, and that's kind of what it felt like for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't help you anymore.
It was like
Right.
the kind of joke where it was like the kind of joke where there's 6 people sitting across the table from you, and every time the one guy says a joke, those 6 people laugh, and you sit there and you go, what?
Because hey,
Well, was it? I'm glad you thought that was funny, but it wasn't funny for me, and I'm the one who paid to be here.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be that guy, but based on what was set up and was talked about in the previous movie, I kind of want those things to matter.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't, well, why did I go see the first movie and why did I see this movie if they're 2 completely different movies?
Yeah.
Right. It's like,
Remember, this
why
is
am I
the first
trusting
time-
you? Why am I trusting you to trick me
Yep.
if you're not gonna, tell me that you're okay? And
Yeah.
and that's not what we're getting. We're getting a lot of you're a silly person, and it doesn't make for good plot. It doesn't make for a good story.
It just doesn't make for a fun viewing experience.
I mean, you don't
and
have
it
to
doesn't
tell
make me
everybody that
wanna
they're the
go
best
there.
people on earth. I mean,
It
you don't have to do that, but
Yeah.
you can tell them that. Yeah, this thing you thought was true. This thing you thought isn't true. That's that. But balance it out a little bit, man. Otherwise, they ain't going to trust you.
Yeah. What was it? I remember this isn't the first time you've had a problem with something they dropped in at the last second in a Star Wars movie.
Uh-oh.
So basically, the post was about, you have that scene in the end of The Force Awakens where Rey goes to the island and meets Luke, and you see him, and they just walk up to each other and kind of stare, and there's like 3 shots where they basically make faces at each other, and it's hilarious, really. And,
I thought it was kind of. I actually cried during that moment because when she's holding out that lightsaber, this lightsaber that's so much familial history that
Right.
she's holding out to him.
Yeah.
He recognizes it instantly, and I felt it was a really touching moment. I teared up a little bit. I'm man
As
enough
a Star Wars
to admit it.
fan,
Okay.
As a Star Wars fan, as a man in general, I teared up at that moment because it felt
Manly tears.
it felt like a passing of a baton. She had the baton,
Yep.
and she's like, "I'm running with this," but I'm also giving it back to you because this is part of your history. This is yours. Like I have no place in this family, allegedly, but this is for you. And I felt that was a very important moment. And then
they go,
tonal change to
they go to The Last
literally
Jedi,
5 seconds later,
and he throws it over
and
his
he
shoulder.
tosses it over his shoulder like it's a joke.
And it
No,
feels...
I waited 2 years to see that movie. I had emotionally involved, and then to tonally change it where he just goes, "Eh."
Yeah.
What a Mark Hamill move! Mark Hamill playing Luke, playing Mark Hamill.
Gotcha.
It was.
It-
I didn't like that.
Yes.
But what that post was saying was I didn't like that they didn't have a plan between Rian Johnson and have like
Yeah,
if you're going to
they
switch
didn't-
directors, that's cool. Do
Right.
that. But you have to have a plan of where this is going. You can't just go, well, everything that happened there is going to change now, so it's a switch of direction. That isn't, to me, isn't good storytelling.
Yeah.
Well, like there was a guy who made a video on this that I saw where he was talking about just Finn's character plot line between him and Phasma, and he was like, so why, because all we've got is in The Force Awakens, Finn beats up Phasma essentially, and chucks her in a trash compactor. So
We had Chewbacca's
Finn wins,
back up, so.
yeehaw, and then the next one he beats her again. And
What's gonna
kills
happen
her
in the
this
next
time,
one?
allegedly.
She's not dead. There's no way they can kill
I
Gwendolyn
know,
Christie
I know.
like
Yeah.
that.
But anyway, so he kills her off. It's like, what the heck is the plot arc here? I mean, there's no Phasma beats him. So this guy was pitching
She's
like
gonna
a.
lose again in the next
This guy
one.
was just
Yeah.
pitching a hypothetical plot line for him, and it was it went. He said, well, okay, so this is how it should have gone: is where Phasma beats the crap out of Finn in the first movie,
and he gets better.
In the second movie, he fights her to a standstill, and then in the third movie, he wins, or something like that. And that's like an actual character arc. And I heard that, and I was like, well, of course.
Well, why would
like who didn't?
Yeah.
But
Ryan Johnson knew he wasn't going to direct the next one. So
that's why. That's
like,
yeah.
I have to get it in that he wins again.
I
agree. That's exactly. You're cultivating these feelings in your audience, and you're trying to get them to feel certain things, and then instead of fulfilling them, it feels like it's just gotchas. Like, ha. You shouldn't have cried about that because now you're an idiot.
Right. Well, now I feel stupid because it's like I was emotionally involved in that, and I thought the next thing he was going to say was like, not just some joke, but just something like, just something insightful. I don't even know what. Like I could write something, give me some time, but like something insightful about like, I never thought I'd see that lightsaber again, or like something like, I don't know, just something more than tossing over your shoulder, like, I'm not a Jedi anymore. Then why are you hiding here on a Jedi temple planet with the sacred books that are on here? Like, okay, if you didn't want to be part of Jedi, why are you here? Go live on an asteroid, or something like that. Go like, why here? Did you come here to look for answers from the Prime Jedi?
Why did you send a map back so they could find you?
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's if you didn't care, then why? Like, of all places, just go back to Tatooine. They'll never find you in Tatooine.
Yeah, none of this.
Just pull a Ben
follows.
And complete the circle.
None of it follows from one movie to the next. It feels like they're not making a story so much as they're making a pastiche, like a collage of things.
Can you spell that word? Pastiche.
I think I can.
You can't use words that you can't spell.
Pastiche, and one of them has like a little apostrophe thing over it.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay. I know big words. I studied the film.
Well, and we were talking about this in the combat scenes. And, even the battle scenes, and you see this is very, very evident in The Last Jedi, is that they have no patience. There's no suspense buildup for anything that happens. They don't play with any real suspense buildup,
right?
And it seriously damages their ability to make any kind of story, any kind of real plot, because real plot is built on some amount of suspense. Not everything is suspense, but you ought to be, as an audience member, I want to be asking, how are the heroes going to get out of this, instead of having them say, oh well, we don't know how the heroes are going to get out of this. Now we'll kill them until we only have 50 rebels left. So I was interested in what you thought about that whole the suspense aspect, Craig. I was wondering what you thought.
Okay, so I did listen to you guys talking about that.
Yeah.
And I think build up is everything, and I kind of agree that it really does feel like you're afraid your audience is going to get bored. Mm-hmm. Like you've forgotten that suspense is a tool that keeps your audience interested. A movie recently that did suspense super, super well was The Quiet Place.
I saw that. Yeah, that was excellent.
Man, I still haven't seen that yet.
Movie. Oh my god!
Everybody go see A Quiet
spoilers.
Place. Free plug for you, John Krasinski.
Absolutely.
And Emily
I used my
Blunt.
movie pass to go see it.
Yeah.
Such a good movie. Like
everybody should go see that.
Suspense was literally killing me. Like I'm sitting in the theater and it's like there's people like I had popcorn, not munching popcorn in the movie because I'm just like, what's happening? If I make a noise, something's gonna happen. And so the entire movie, it's like you're just quiet. You're sitting in suspense the entire movie. That was the thrill of a lifetime, as far as recent movies go, for like thrillers. And it's like, it was paced. And it's like, there wasn't always something there. And I'm trying to be as vague as possible, not spoiling what it is.
A lot of it was this lack of stuff. It was all based on the stuff that you didn't know.
Right, exactly.
That was creating that suspense. Something would appear
but
where you were like, oh no, how did that get there?
It also took 15 minutes for something to go from downstairs to upstairs. And the entire time you're like...
yeah.
or they show something, a piece of hardware that is sitting on, say, a stair. And that just one shot of that, and you go, "Oh no!" And that has no payoff for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But when it does pay off, you're like, "Oh no!" Like you're freaking out.
Yeah.
And I was hyperventilating that movie. It was such so. I think, like I said, suspense is a tool, and I feel like you were talking about in the last podcast. You were talking about how
we were talking
it's
about
kind of like the
Avengers,
Avengers,
and in the Avengers
and
works
where
this way
it's like
too.
you got to go action. Okay, and you have some boring moments that are just so boring, and then action that makes up for it. You don't have to have that. You can have a slow build. You can have some, like.
I felt like what just comes to mind right here, and it doesn't build suspense quite the same way as some other ones do, but 13 Hours. Had an interesting role of building suspense to that final battle.
Normally, you'd think. See, this is, I think, one of the real life. Here's one of those things where real life and fiction, like the real life is better. It makes the fiction better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think most people agree that, like, everybody went to see the first Transformers and they were like, "Oh, that was okay," and that was kind of fun, or maybe they didn't like it, but it was a decent movie. It was fun. Mm-hmm. And then the others came out, and it was like they were all like 2.5 hour slugfests with no end in sight. They could not pace anything. It was all slow mo. It was all hyper colored. It was all
just metal smashing together,
and metal
mountains just crashing into each other.
And Michael Bay took his $1 billion and went home. He was happy with that.
I'm happy for him.
I'm happy for him. He's perfectly free to do that. But there's no tension to any of it, and they're just awful. But then he was directing 13 Hours.
Yep.
And I thought, you know what, that might be okay. And the reason I thought it might be okay is because of two things. One,
it's real life.
Well, one, it's real life. He has some real life events he has to conform to, and he's working with the people who were actually there, and that means that he has to pace what actually happened, and that is where you really see a story at work. You have all this raw, stuff to work with. You got, reports and eyewitness accounts and all of this other stuff, and all you have to do is take it and pace it well, and he does that. I really think he does. I was watching it going, this is a Michael Bay movie?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I was first watching it. And I came out of it going, wait, this is what?
This was Michael Bay. Wow, okay.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a really excellent movie, and it keeps that pace up. He's good at it, but because it has the informed part of what all of these soldiers were thinking about, and all of those eyewitnesses and all those advisors, it kind of constrains it into this very tight place where it has to be perfect. And otherwise, people start to get, and he had the film stuff, and they had the real life stuff, and that makes it work. Everybody go see 13 Hours as well. Absolutely. That's an excellent movie.
And that really made it work because
also had John Krasinski in it.
John Krasinski, just fantastic.
He's
actor,
amazing.
Absolutely
fantastic director.
Yeah. Also, okay, I'm going to plug a third one just because. So he's married to Emily Blunt. They were both in A Quiet Place. Excellent. 13 Hours is great, and she was
The Office.
Opposite. Well, yeah,
that's true. That's so true.
Emily Blunt played opposite Tom Cruise in Edge of Tomorrow, which is easily one of the best action movies like this decade. Go see that movie, Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, did super well in China.
Oh boy,
I believe that.
But
yeah.
But
back to the topic. I was just going
to say quickly about Michael Bay is I think 13 Hours works so well because as a director, he's really good at getting every frame is a painting. Like every frame for him is really there's not a frame of his movie that is not well shot, well composed, stuff like that.
It's pretty.
It's his pacing that he has a problem with, and I think him teaming up with that team that works on 13 Hours really helps him with his strength. He's really good at that.
He had to pace what they were thinking.
If you watch Transformers, there's not a shot of Transformers that is not cinematic. There's not a shot that's not moving. There's not
there's always something going on.
There's always something going on. There's always depth. He's really good at capturing that. I just don't necessarily think storytelling is his strong suit.
Pacing for sure.
Or pacing is his strong suit. Pacing is absolutely one. That's the thing. If someone goes, if you're going to talk about pacing like this, well, why don't you do it? Pacing's hard. Pacing is absolutely one of the most difficult things to do in film.
Yeah.
And if you say, Craig, can you do any better? Probably not.
Yeah.
I could probably make a Transformers movie just as good as Michael Bay, minus the beautiful cinematography and every shot being just gorgeous. I can do just as good.
Yeah.
Except for worse. But that being said, it's I can still appreciate when it's done well.
Yes, and we've done some stuff together. I mean, you do media professionally, so don't count yourself too
don't
terribly.
Say you don't do professionally.
Well, I do, and
you make money from it.
You've done more commercial type stuff. I've done more fiction type stuff. I've made short films. Matt's helped out with those, and I've had to write scripts. I wrote a novel which I worked very hard on the pacing, and usually that seems to be something that people like about it. It's funny, while I was in school studying media, it was funny because that was one of the first laws that they told us. It was basically one of the first rules of thumb was that usually newbies cut too long. Every shot is too long. If you cut, cut. It's always better if you cut. And I most of the time I agreed. There was definitely a time in my development where I had to cut, and that was important. Was to cut, make everything as short as possible, not think about the sweat and the hours and the pain and the time sitting there in the dirt trying to get this shot from this angle. If it doesn't work, cut it.
Everyone on YouTube can thank me for that. I kept forcing him to do it. I was like, we don't need that scene.
Oh yeah, he's
absolutely brutal.
Everyone knows that's happening. No one needs to see that.
Right. He'll sit there and go, "Why are you taking that shot?" I'll be like, "It's just because it does this," and he's like, "Forget it. Let's move on."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at your actors; they're dying.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. But anyway, on set, on set you try to get as much as you can, but in the edit bay, you kill your darlings, as they say. You just cut and you cut and you cut and you cut. But it was funny. Every now and then, I would encounter somebody who had the opposite problem. They did not say enough. They did not build up enough. They couldn't let something just lie for just a few seconds long enough for it to be good. And they would end up cutting everything just a half second too short or 2 seconds too short or something. And that's where you get, I think, a lot of those choppy action scenes in movies nowadays, is everything is chopped down. And it was only when I got to, I think, maybe not this one, but there were a couple of action movies, like you had the remake of Red Dawn. Yeah. And you notice that especially where everything seemed to happen within about 5 seconds, and there was always some kind of shock. And
it does seem, when I think back on it, it's all this it feels like it's all compressed. Like there's too many things going on. Like YouTube video played and fast forward. You know.
Yeah, it was like one of those YouTube videos where it's like every time they say this or every time somebody shoots a gun, it gets 5% faster.
Same.
And
Star Wars goes by really fast.
Yeah. And it felt like that was kind of what was happening when you saw when I was watching like The Force Awakens. Like they were like, "Hey, you didn't want politics in this movie, did you? Oh, we blew up the politics."
Yeah,
they just literally shoot it with a giant sun laser.
Right, but now that brings more politics that actually are now more pressing than they were before. Like, you just left the Republic out of it. That's fine.
Yeah,
but
kind of, yeah.
Now you introduced a need for politics that you're not going to fulfill.
Yeah. That's really a good point. Yeah, I didn't think.
And
about
also,
it
they had things like, obviously, things that were introduced to create tension that should not have been there. Like when you have the scene in the beginning of The Last Jedi where they have the dreadnought shows up, and it fires on the base. And the reason it fires on the base is, even though it's empty, is of course because
it can't go back to it.
Well, because they need to be able to charge.
Yeah.
And so you give time for the bombers to destroy it before the ships leave for hyperspace. But that brings up like 8 questions, because they frame it as if, well, we don't want all these guys to die for nothing, but at the same time, they all died for nothing. And that's kind of the lesson you should have learned, Poe. And yet you see shots from on the bridge where the captain's like, the guns are charged. Now we're going to turn them on the fleet. And so, in other words, neither Poe nor Leia know about this, but they were totally justified wasting all those bombers to blow up the ship. Because if they hadn't done that and jumped, then the dreadnought would have shown up 2 seconds later and blown up the ships anyway, and then Poe's right. But why is Leia not going to hyperspace? Why are the bombers not listening to Leia? Why are they... It's just too many holes, but they're obviously... They're just throwing this thing in. It's like, this point's too slow. We got to throw something in there. What if the guns are charging and they're going to blow up the ship? So now the bombers have to destroy the ship, or, and then it's like, no, you just screwed up your plot. Stop. Just stop putting things in it. It's like a sitcom writers meeting, and everyone, right? Well, they're bringing up new questions, and they're just throwing things. And it's like, how many writers are on this thing? It's like a sitcom. It's like everybody's throwing a joke in.